around comprehensive immigration reform today.
Thank you. We've got one more question.
Hola, Juan. This is Laura Rendon. What I am concerned about, and as you know, we've been working on STEM issues now for 20, 30 years. This is not a new issue that suddenly appears on the horizon. My frustration has been that a lot of the work that has been done to get more Latinos and underrepresented, underserved groups into STEM fields really occurs at the margins, at the periphery of what really goes on in higher education. So that we might have a lot of these very good programs that raise awareness and provide support and provide tutorial services to students, etc. But when that student steps into a physics class, when that student steps into, you know, that biology class, they're usually the only one. The professor is usually not Latino. There are sometimes stereotypical views about Latino students and other groups. You can't really, you know, what are you doing here? At some point, we have to address the core of what goes on in higher education. And oftentimes that doesn't get discussed because, you know, there's a focus on the raising awareness and encouragement and what have you. Important things, but I think that the conversation now needs to shift to the core of higher education, to making sure that from the president to the faculty on up, number one, there is buy-in about the importance of this and really supporting it. But I'd like to know from your perspective and where you are now and the advocacy, the great advocacy work that you do, what do you need from us in terms of policy and practice recommendations to put this on the table of people that can fund and support at your level so that we can apply for these grants and so that we can now begin to seep in and make a really critical difference so that those students step into classrooms and know that, you know, they're going to succeed. It's a complicated issue, I know that you know, I know that there's not a clear-cut answer, but at some point now I'm ready now to move from the 20, 30 years of advocacy and support and mentoring to really getting into, you know, the mainstream of higher education.
To be a part of it, we want you to be part of it. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I think we have some very specific opportunities right now that have just kind of come to the floor. So, for example, with the healthcare and education reconciliation bill that was just passed by Congress, there was $1 billion that's now been appropriated by Congress for over the next 10 years. It's an extra $100 million a year at the higher ed end, focused on strengthening Hispanic-serving institutions. So we have a choice here right now with new dollars, and we don't have to go back to Congress every year. We now have 10 years to really up the ante on how higher ed plays the kind of role that you all are talking about today. That's a very specific piece. In addition to that, the reauthorization piece that I was talking about early, and you all know in the room, because it says K through 12, that can't happen successfully unless higher ed is directly involved with those conversations and being part of that as well. So as we're moving forward with the reauthorization of the former No Child Left Behind bill, there's the potential there where the president has asked in the budget for $3 to $4 billion to really think how we rethink the work that we're doing there, and STEM is a very specific piece of that. So the higher ed institutions need to be a part of those conversations. They need to be a part of those, and I mentioned this earlier, you all know, it's not just about STEM in isolation. It's STEM as part of the well-rounded education reform effort that needs to take place. And within it, I won't go through all of them right now, but there are very specific pots of dollars and resources that are aimed solely at STEM within. So for example, I'll give you one example. We have a new fund that's called the Innovation Fund. A lot of the groups there are probably know about it and are putting forth proposals. But in the next budget, for the next fiscal year, the president has asked for another $500 million to promote programs that are already working that we can take to scale. It's one type. Programs that are moving in the right direction, we call them validating programs, where they need a little bit more resources to get to the next level. And then the third piece are some really new, fresh ideas. But of that $500 million, the president has asked specifically that $150 million of that $500 million pool be solely directed at STEM. So that's one example, but I think that's another place where higher ed institutions can get involved with the K through 12 system, so that we're making sure we're doing what needs to happen earlier on in the system, in addition to the strengthening institution money I was talking about for HSIs. Those are just a couple examples, but think about it. Anywhere along the way of the education system where the higher ed institutions need to kind of be involved, we need you kind of telling us, to push us to do it, to want to be a part of it, to see how HSIs use those dollars, to tap what's happening at the reauthorization level at K through 12 level. Those are some of the places where I think there are very direct links to what you're talking about, where the higher ed institutions can get beyond, we've been talking about this for 20 to 30 years, and really go to action.
Thank you, Juan.
You're welcome.
I think we thank you for your time that you've had to speak with us and answer our questions. And I think from all of us here, you've provided us with a lot of information that we'd be able to use for the rest of this summit that we have. Dr. Flores?